Landon's first marriage, which seemed like a real love match at the time, fell apart after a few years. They had a son during that time, but they were still quite young when they divorced. Landon loved his first wife with all his heart, so the breakup was really tough, but it didn't end their relationship with their child. Landon made it a priority to spend as much time as he could with their son. Then Landon started seeing other women, all of whom wanted to hear him pop the question, but he never did. The rejected suitors moved on to more serious relationships. Landon wasn't opposed to getting married again, but he was patient because none of these women were enough to be a long-term partner. 35 years passed like this until his milestone birthday. He celebrated at a fancy restaurant with lots of guests, including business partners, childhood friends, and relatives. She was the administrator of this establishment, and she captured Landon's attention throughout the celebrations. When he mustered the courage to request her number at the end of the evening, she didn't reject him. She showed a lot of interest in the mature man. His friends questioned his choice, saying that his chosen paramour was too young for him. They said that kids lack intellect and imagination. Landon was blinded by love and respect, so he responded with he was thinking to himself, with a contented grin, "But deep down you're envious of me," he retorted. "You wouldn't mind having a youthful belle in your bed." Eventually, their talks led nowhere. Out of the blue, Landon popped the question to Pat. Speaking ill of his buddy's spouse was out of the question for anyone. Days turned into weeks, and Landon found himself unable to contain his joy with his youthful bride. Life couldn't be more perfect. Business was thriving, and his personal life was bursting with happiness. Pat went out of her way to make her husband content. Initially keeping her, eventually, though, her true personality started to show. Landon found this revelation only made his wife more captivating and intriguing. In the third year of their marriage, they had their first significant blowout after a heated exchange. Peyton stormed out with her purse, not returning until the wee hours of the morning. She was noticeably inebriated. This particular year of their marriage turned into a roller coaster of disputes, leaving Landon deeply distressed. He thought their relationship had been flawless. One afternoon after another dispute, he drove to work in a bad mood, thinking about the argument. His business partner, Miles, called to suggest they meet for lunch to go over some plans. Miles said, "You look like you're in a bad mood today." Landon hadn't planned to talk about personal matters, but the quarrel with his wife came up. Miles listened, nodded, and then asked, "Is everything okay in the bedroom?" Landon was surprised by the question. He was taken aback by the strange, probing question. "Well, of course. Why do you ask? What's the point? My second wife used to behave like that when she was seeing a trainer on the side." The man replied, "She carried on like a teenager, thinking I wouldn't catch on. During that time, our intimacy dwindled. She pretty much lost interest in me." Landon was pretty blown away by this strange revelation. He'd never considered the possibility that his marital squabbles could stem from such a cause. This idea was unfamiliar territory for him. It stuck with him all day, gnawing at him. Landon couldn't work out why his mom's comments had got him thinking. He did some research online about spotting a cheating partner, and this newfound knowledge made him more aware of what was going on. He started watching Peyton's behavior closely. Initially, everything seemed normal. His wife carried on as usual, and their nighttime routines remained unchanged. However, the arguments didn't cease. In fact, Landon began to note a pattern. Their fights always followed a sudden and inexplicable dip in Peyton's mood. A trivial matter would quickly escalate into a full-blown argument. The argument got pretty heated, and she stormed off, yelling that she hated him, and then just disappeared into the night. Landon hired a private investigator to keep an eye on Peyton and see what she was up to over the next few days. He also asked the PI to track her down after their next fight and find out who she'd been hanging out with. Landon tried to act normal, chatting with Peyton as if nothing was going on. He was really hoping she'd come back. "My wife and I were very happy together, and I was determined to avoid a split. I had a clear vision of our future together, which didn't include infidelity." The investigator, Hudson, said he'd get in touch once he'd gathered more information. Hudson told me he'd contact me when he was ready, which made me anxious. Finally, Hudson got in touch, and we arranged to meet. I was waiting for the detective when I saw him arrive. Outside a busy business hub, the second building seemed to stretch on forever. Then a soft tap on the glass startled him. Hudson slid into the passenger seat beside him. "Hello, what have you discovered?" Landon blurted out, unable to contain his impatience any longer. "It's all part of the human condition." The man kicked off his tale with a series of photographs detailing what he observed and what he could piece together. Piton was in the company of familiar faces: her mother, her, and close friends. One showed her stepping into a beauty parlor, another strolling through a posh boutique. Up to this point, everything appeared harmless. But then Hudson captured a moment when Piton dashed out after a spat at home. She was seen leaving the building and slipping into a heavily tinted SUV. Landon felt he got a cold shiver down his spine. None of Peyton's acquaintances drove a vehicle like that. The driver was hard to pin down. His face never caught on camera, but some shots revealed it was unmistakably a man. Together, Peyton and this mysterious driver arrived at a club. Photos showed him holding her close, his hands awkwardly low on her hips, while she smiled with a hint of embarrassment. Landon handed Hudson the payment, returned everything he had brought in the envelope, and hurried to Peyton's house to resolve everything he was aware of. He found his wife with her friends and knew where they'd met. When he got to the restaurant, he went straight in, looking angry. He had photos of his wife and her lover. Peyton could tell he was upset. He threw the photos at her and asked what she'd been up to. He was being rude and vulgar. Peyton and her friends didn't move. They were frozen in place. The restaurant fell silent. Landon was bothered by the background music from the Faint. He tried to attack Piton, but a guard stopped him. The guard held him back against his own body. Landon felt terrible and embarrassed that day. He took whatever belongings he could find from Peyton and put them near the garbage bin on the street. He didn't feel sorry for Peyton, even though he had paid for those items. He decided to only communicate with his wife through a lawyer. Despite relentless pleas for forgiveness, he remained resolute and unwavering in his decision. Through mutual acquaintances, he learned that his friends distanced themselves from Peyton following the incident at the restaurant, and that her lover refused to help her in her time of need. As a result, the divorced woman had nothing left but to seek refuge with her parents, and eventually return to her previous position as an administrator. Peyton lost everything due to her foolish desire to have the best of both worlds.